Hey everybody, welcome to this festive season and to this essential conversation. We're here with Erin, who's going to bring and is on a mission to bring the heart right back into the classroom. So we can all have memories of what it was like when we were young going to school. I personally had a bit of a roller coaster with school. I didn't particularly like it that much. And I don't know if it was a mixture of the characters who were teaching it, the style of which it was being taught, or the sort of structure governmentally that was enforcing how it was being taught. And I don't know which one of those impacted me, but I never wanted to go to school, and I have some kind of bad memories of it. And this is why it's so important, as I do work with teenagers and I work with adults, and we talk about school. We talk about how school was hard, it was challenging, not academically, but emotionally and relationally. And the scars of schooling comes into my treatment room often. So I'd love to introduce Erin to you guys. Erin is an educator of children and adults. She's a presenter and founder of the Heart in Education, a program about personal growth. As a speaker with a focus on social and emotional learning, mindfulness, and relational aspects of teaching and parenting. Wow, I love this. She has been invited to present at the Paradigm Project Conference, CAIS Learning Series, and Reflective Teacher Podcast, and the Mindfulness and Education Conference in 2017 and 2018. Her foundation is 20 years as a classroom teacher, a parent, educator, and including being awarded the Goldenheim Award of Excellence in Teaching. She's a director of the Associate Teacher Program at an independent school in Connecticut. I love the sound of Connecticut. It sounds like a great place to hang out. I like this. I like the connect part of it, like connection. Where she mentors new teachers and creates and teaches innovative, developmental, targeted well-being curriculum for students, teachers, and families. Erin is also 19 years yoga and mindfulness instructor, and she's a leading yoga teacher. She does trainings, workshops, international retreats for adults. This is a serious woman right here, and she's a woman. She's walking her talk. And Erin, welcome for being here today.
Thank you. I'm so happy and grateful to be joining you and have this experience to chat a little bit.
Yeah, well, it's so important for me because I have a wild, feral child who I'm trying to kind of support the wildness and not have it shut down. So it was very important to me personally to speak to you, who, in my eyes, is a woman who's bringing innovation and heart back into the classroom in a way that's needed in the world today. And I'm really curious about what fostered this sort of step into teaching for you as you were growing up. Just want to get a backdrop for the audience. What has you here? What started you on this trajectory?
Yeah. I'm initially what got me into teaching. I think for so many teachers, teaching's really a calling, and it certainly was that way for me. I was very into babysitting. I would sort of show up to as a 13, 14-year-old babysitter, show up with whole lesson plans and activities. And it was just something in me that as time went on, then being in the classroom, having this sense of mission and bless you, this sort of interesting perspective of, at the time I was teaching kindergarten, and feel like kindergartners are just the most incredible, inspiring beings to spend time with, and their wonder and ability to be present and joyful and laughter and real with their feelings. And so I was doing that by day and then teaching yoga and mindfulness at night, where adults were coming to do yoga and meditate, in some ways, I think, seeking to reconnect with these things I was seeing in the kindergartners each day, to reconnect to their own wonder and awe. And so it got me curious of, could there be something put into place in education exactly, and parenting, where instead of having this disconnect from these these core capacities, that's what I'm naming those qualities in ourselves, could there be something that helps children deepen their connection to them as they evolve over time instead of losing that connection? And that's really the essence of this work.
Wow. And as you were in, I love the imagery of you as a little 13-year-old heading into babysitting with way too much to offer than probably that was being even back then. Like there was a real vision to know that something had to be done here.
Mm,
Something had to be done. This was a sacred role. This was almost a vocation.
mm,
So I'm curious, as you were in the world of teaching and the teaching that happens today still, I'm sure it's not hasn't changed much. Well, not yet. You're trying to do something about that, but what do you think, or what do you feel even is where's teaching going down the wrong road? Uh, uh, where's the trouble in the classroom from your
mm.
perspective?
Great question. Where my mind and heart go first is, especially, I think the pandemic brought so much of this to the surface, but um, teachers needing a way to stay inspired and nourish themselves. I think there's so much pressure put upon teachers. It's so challenging in so many ways. And time is such a challenge, to have enough time to not only do everything we want to do in the classroom, but then what's needed to take care of ourselves, to be able to come to our work at our best. So, ways for teachers to be nourished. And then I think increasingly, what's focused on, at least in the schools in the US where I've had experience, even at really wonderful schools, it stays all about the mind and the cognitive capacities of the child. And even when we get into social emotional learning, I think what's at the core is really knowing who is the spirit of a child, like you refer to your wild feral child. But if we could have the same kind of prioritizing and focus on getting to know who the child is at their core, and learning to see those inner aspects in their deeper being, I, I it would be so powerful, I think, in the child's development to have that be what's seen.
Well, it's interesting that you bring in this radical concept. Well, to maybe some it's radical to really see a child,
Mm,
to have that level of interest in a child, because that's exactly what doesn't happen with most of the clients who come into my treatment room, is that they have never been seen. There was never that interest in them by their family on a deep level. There was follow the rules, follow the
right.
regime, follow the dictate. This is what you do. And there was very little interest in the individuality
Mhm.
of the family member. And this really the lack of interest, the lack of real interest and presence of the people who mattered in the lives of these now adults as children really affected them in ways that they're still trying to find their way through. This is so here, and you talk about if we can bring that essential thing of being able to create time and interest in being able to see and identify the unique individual sort of attributes of this being, this child in the school. Well, that feels so powerful. Like that's what
Mm,
it's all about. It's
mm,
that lack of interest that I see that causes trouble. So if
right.
there's any amping that up, that just feels like the right thing to do.
Yeah, thank you for seeing that. And it's really a win-win, because I think when teachers are operating from that way of being, it's nourishing for them as well. So since that's such a tricky place right now in education, I think the numbers are something like 40% of teachers are leaving the vocation because it's so challenging, that this would be a way where they can get re-inspired while they're working.
Yeah, well, this is another thing that we talk about teachers, and we talk about the sort of whenever there's a lack of exchange like that happening, then it's like there's no, you're not being filled by your work in a way.
Right.
It's like, it's like it's displaying, it's running out a sort of routine. It's like you can't, for some people that might work for them, but
Sure.
the teachers who come into my clinic over the years, and they deal with sort of pressure, depression, anger issues. They deal a lot with sort of struggles, to have a voice within the government, where they're feeling kind of stuck in a way. They can't do sometimes what they want to do, so it reenacts their childhood again, where they just are overly adapted.
Yeah.
And after a while, it accumulates internally, and whether it's a depressiveness or a sort of angriness, or whether it's a sort of different flavors of feeling apathetic or pulling back or being like kind of feeling heavy and kind of distant. This all shows up in the classroom. So it's really important that teachers who take on the sacred role of chaperoning and sort of guiding figurines to a child's eyes, that you need to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. And it's applicable for parents too. I think when parents really take the viewpoint not only to see the deeper aspects of their child, but to come from a place of acceptance. It's so, well, I think parents are the most well-meaning and really wanting to nurture and guide their child. But sometimes when that leads to just looking at what needs to be fixed, using that kind of language of fixed or changed about the child, it consciously, subconsciously can lead to the child feeling incomplete in some way and put so much pressure on parenting, where when we are able to take a step back and have the perspective of who is this incredible being in front of me and what's unique to them, and how can I accept and really love whatever is there, then there's this ease to parenting. It's like we don't have to be working so hard or doing so much. And not to say that there's still not guiding and nurturing that will occur, but it, I think, takes the edge off a little bit.
Yeah. But I have, for those of you who are new to tuning into Wellbeings, we're an organization where we offer therapy online, in person, in the clinic here in Bali, and we run retreats all over the world, and we run a lot of online groups, and we have a lot of online groups, and where the focus is mothers or parents who attend and get to be supported by each other. It's like, if you're a parent, so we talked about the children, what they need to be seen. Like the teachers, in a way, somehow they need supported. They need to have space to deal with any struggles they're having within their work life or their private life. And for parents to be good enough parents, they need to be supported as well. And when I hear you say, yeah, that's just, see your kids and accept them the way they are. But a lot of parents are parenting with outdated hand-me-downs from how they were parented, that will feel like the absolute only way to parent. And I got to, like, with compassion, I think what can help everybody, which has greatly helped me as an imperfect, good enough parent, is to be in spaces where there's other parents, where I'm open to hear different ways of being, seeing, feeling, accepting, being able to be curious with our children, learning to explore. How are we? Or is it like, conformity? Does the kid just need to conform? And if they don't conform, then there's rules. Or do we not have any? Do we just let the kids run wild and have no actual guidance there? And like, how can we talk about this and be open to hear other people's? So that, for me, I think is really important. I think if all these three major components, the children are supported, the teachers are supported, and the parents are supported. And just because you have support guys doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong.
Right. Right.
Because
Absolutely.
I love what you came in there. He says, yeah, like, parents are the most hard, like they have the right intentions
Mhm.
almost all
Of
the time.
course.
Like, and it's so important because often people we demonize or have faculty people point the finger at parents, or parents point the finger at themselves so much as well. Like it's such that
Right.
that self-critical, I would also call parental figure in our minds that
Yes.
really waggles that little finger constantly, and how
Right.
painful it is and
Yeah.
secret it is. So yeah, we need support for all those three factors that we talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And is that what you do with your program? Do you cater for the children, the parents, and the teachers?
Yeah. So one way I think we look at how that support, as you say, could look like is making support be through shifting the lens on personal growth. So the teacher and the parent during the day is consciously looking for those challenges that come up, taking those moments of reactivity and using those as opportunities to pull back from a bigger perspective and consider, instead of trying to shrink this part of my child or my student, how can I grow this part of myself? That there's some piece here for me to, if it's hooking me in some kind of way in that reactive place, um, that's good input, and there's something there for me to learn from. And so it's learning from that, but I think it's going through the day with the intention to take on whatever comes from that kind of perspective that can be its own sort of self-care, because we're less enmeshed in the challenge and pulling back from a bigger perspective.
It sounds a lot like, in a way, the old, well, it's been around for a while, sort of conscious parenting. You know,
Yes.
in relation to the teacher as well as the parent.
Mhm.
Where, and I think for all of us, doesn't matter who we are. If we're getting triggered, then we got some skin in the game here. It's not.
Exactly.
Really,
And to your
I agree.
point, and the waggling finger to put out there that we all are triggered all day long. There's not anybody that's sort of free from that. That's an inevitable. That is part of the human condition, shared human experience. We're all in the same boat there. So nothing to feel bad about in that way. And then what we try to do, this is the teacher in me, is make things very practical. So, what does that, when I feel myself hooked, what does that look like to unhook? What are some of the steps I can take? And so one would,
Erin, could you just explain to the viewer your understanding of what hooked means? Like, what
sure.
is that exactly?
So, I'm hesitant. I don't have a background in therapy, so I try not to use the word triggered, because that to me sort of sounds a little bit more like a therapeutic approach, but it's essentially that, to be triggered to, I don't know if, people are familiar with Dan Siegel's work and the idea of sort of flipping our lid, where we want to be operating from our prefrontal cortex. This is my image of our brain here. And so right where our forehead is prefrontal cortex, that's where higher level thinking happens, insight, compassion, empathy. But it's very normal throughout the day. We flip our lid, we're operating more from this instinctive part of our brain, the fight, flight, freeze. And so when we're hooked, we're here. We're in that place of not using our higher level thinking. We're a little bit more reactive or could be irritated. Oftentimes, when we're operating from this place, we tend to take things personally. I think that's always a sign of a hook, that I've got some interpretation of what's occurring rather than being able to see it what it is. So I'll get into steps about how we can do that, but that's how I'm meaning the word hooked.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Yeah, it's so important. I think just to presence here with the viewers that, and you're right, Erin, we all get hooked, we all get triggered numerous times a day, and sometimes they're minor, sometimes they're major. And if you've ever been in a relationship with somebody, then you know something about being triggered.
Yes,
Um,
exactly. Right.
And I remember, I forget the quote where it came from, but they said, if you ever want to feel lonely, enter into a romantic relationship, because
Mm,
that wound will come up somewhere along the
no
line.
kidding. Oh my gosh, no kidding.
But yeah, so we get hooked. So teachers can get hooked, and they can get triggered. They can get angry. They can get defensive. They can sulk even.
Right.
So these are all particular reactions to something that's going on internally for the teacher. There's a history that's making them get affected by this, and as you said, the sort of brain chemistry is working in a particular way.
Exactly.
What
Exactly.
happens when we get hooked? What's a new way, instead of running around like Neanderthals and banging our chest or hiding under the table? What else can we do?
Sure. Well, the first step could be just to honestly ask ourselves, when we look at our child in this moment or our student, are we seeing them from a place of frustration or compassion? And that will lead us to be clear of, if it's frustration, that's totally okay, but that means that somehow I've flipped my lid, or I'm a little bit hooked. And then a second tool I'm borrowing from Dr. Becky, wonderful child development psychologist here in the US. She talks about being on the same team, using same team language. So sometimes if we're in that reactive state, we're seeing our child as the problem. But if we can even envision, draw a picture even of the child and myself sitting at the same table, and putting the problem on the other side, that idea of being on the same team can be a way of shifting into having less frustration directed towards the child. So, for example, if fighting about bedtime, bedtime is something tricky, instead of being irritated at your daughter for protesting when it's time to go to bed, or marching around wanting to have a dance party, it would be envisioning and maybe literally sitting with your daughter, putting the bedtime as the problem, and considering, okay, what can we do to help bedtime go well? So you're working together. And I have to say, I've thought, I'm fairly recently married, and back to your comment about, being in romantic relationships as prime ground for triggers and hooks to come up. I find it really helpful to do that in my partnership as well, that kind of same team imagery and practical way of solving the problems that occur.
Well, I think you solve one of the biggest problems, which is you get out of that I'm right, you're wrong mentality. The sort of
Yes.
which it puts you, if you're the one being triggered often, the one like in a more superior position, and the other one in an inferior position, or vice versa. And I think it's so important when we deal with conflict that we gotta step out of that sort of energy and sitting at the same side of the table. I love that. I love that for lots of reasons. That imagery, because we're sitting at the table together.
Mm,
And there's something
mm,
about that togetherness that helps us work through the sort of turbulence of life. And when we
mhm,
sit at a table, we're sitting down to think about it. We're sitting down
mhm.
to be present. We're sitting down at the table where we're going to get nourishment. It's a wonderful imagery for me when I hear you share like that. And I like that. I have other styles that I work with my daughter, but I like that. Just that what you're doing there is like you're starting to shift how you're thinking about it.
Exactly. Exactly. That's what so much of this is. And then the next steps would be along that same line of considering and naming it for ourselves. What is my least generous interpretation of this moment? Or where am I seeing this from my that primitive fight, flight, freeze? So very common for teachers, parents to say, well, they're being disrespectful. That's why they're behaving in this way. And it can certainly feel that way. But I would argue that rarely actually is it about disrespect. That anytime there's some sort of undesired behavior, there's an unmet need. That's a big part of our program as well, looking for those unmet needs underneath the behaviors. And so naming, okay, what is my interpretation of what's occurring here? And then considering, well, what else could be possible? Or if I were to look at this more from my higher level thinking capacities and feeling capacities, maybe it's because the child is looking for needs more of my attention, or there could be a gazillion reasons of why something is what that unmet need is behind the behavior, but broadening our perspective to be able to look at those possibilities.
I love that. It's like you're opening up space where there's congestion. And wow, like I love that. And I'm loving that, I suppose, that feels to me like a sort of very organic, natural orientation, that for parents to have this, from parents who I know who step into the therapeutic world to look at themselves and to explore the struggles of parenting.
Yeah.
For they have a natural sort of eventual orientation to want to do some of what you're sharing. But to have that in the classroom, it just feels like, of course it should be there, but it feels, I think, to the system, a lot more radical when we talk about that.
Sure. When I first, it's been a few years that I've been exploring this work in more meaningful ways and running pilots. And the first couple pilots, when I presented that piece to teachers, that it's not about the child being disrespectful, that got some people hooked just in that kind of statement of they are being disrespectful. And so it's understandable that I think we have that reaction, but it's so important to untangle it. It's going to help those students. It was actually a quote I saw that you posted on your social media that resonated with me so deeply, that I'm paraphrasing, that the children who need the most love ask for it often in the most unloving ways. And my heart goes out to those kids that have that harder way in the classroom, because often with their resistance, they're met with more resistance. But what they really need is that love and that compassion and that adult in their lives that's not going to react to their resistance, but see underneath that of what they really need.
Yeah, I remember speaking to a friend of mine a couple of months back, and he was talking about his name is Ori, and he was mentioning about he found himself having to, like, the thing about parenting with him was to investigate, like trying to investigate what the real problem actually is, and what the real need is in his daughter, and he was so correct. Like, it's like, to do this at home and to do it in the classroom, you'd have to want to take the time to do it.
Yeah.
You'd have to want to invest in the time, which helps to create the interest, which then creates the possibility for hearing what that unmet need is, to hear, like I remember, for example, I got terribly kind of old school, sort of teaching where I wasn't seen and I wasn't heard, and there was no feeling, there was control, and I was very passive as a kid. I probably would have blended into the wallpaper, and but I was in so much pain. I would at home I would break toys, and I would just be sort of, I was I remember years ago, and even recently, some of my siblings' children were sharing, yeah, Mommy said that you used to break your toys a lot growing up. And it was like a funny, jokey sort of thing, and I was like, yeah. And well, I was doing that because there was a lot of repress. I couldn't get the anger out. So I was breaking things up. But there is such a wonderful truth to what you're saying, Erin. And I think, it's all about taking the time to be interested in what's actually going on with your child, and to not get so seduced by the first stack of behavior.
Right.
Because that's them trying to make sense of it through a child's eyes. Take some time to sit at the table with them, I think,
Mm,
and be curious, and don't expect to find out the answer right away. Just
yeah,
it's your presence that somehow along the way might have been not there that much that's causing the problem in the first place. So,
right, right.
but I'm still trying to like. I would love how have you seen models where this is being employed by the teachers?
We're working on it. I mean, I think it's in its very early stages. That's the mission, is to have it happen even more so. I'm lucky where I have this role where I work with it. We call it an associate teacher program, but it's sort of like apprentice teachers in each classroom. And so they're exploring using these tools. And another piece where we've gotten some really good feedback is just the idea that children can be our best teachers, not just in helping us see the places in ourselves we need to grow of where we get hooked, but in the fact, and I would imagine it sounds just from the bits I've learned about your daughter, that this might be particularly true with her, that young children are so connected still to these aspects of ourselves that are perhaps the most powerful piece of being human, the joy, the wonder, the awe, the whatever words you would sort of add there, that we're born with, that in some traditions they might be called our radiances, or our deeper being, but children have that, and it's not covered up as it is in adults as we age. And so when we look at children from that perspective, they can be a really powerful teacher in that way as well. That when we want to remember what it's like to be present, we've got this guru, this muse there all day long to, again, redirect our perspective, our focus, to be inspired by them in that way.
Well, I love that, and I'm experiencing that in this very day because my daughter is 4, going
Mm.
on going on for 14, but
Mhm.
4, and she she brings in the magical thinking, the
Mm.
magical, oh, just this whole magic, mystical Christmas vibe now that I forgot that I had when I was a young kid. So
Sure.
that 1, 2 to 3, she was still like a baby, but now she's in the magic. And
Yeah.
it's beautiful to hop in there with her in that. It's like such a precious thing to yeah to step out of your day and meet her in that place. And
Mm.
because Christmas can be called many things.
Sure.
For me, I see it as like a myth. Like a mythical message that is like Joseph Campbell talks about myth and how it lives in us,
Mm.
and it's important, I think, to chaperone that essence of what Christmas can be. The children embody through their
Yeah.
wonder and how they see things,
Yeah.
and it helps us adults hop on that choo-choo train as well. And
Mm. Mhm.
and I'm just getting lots of teaspoonfuls of that today because we popped up the Christmas tree over the weekend, and it's like it's going. We're singing the songs, and we're wondering, and
Yeah.
we're wandering together in our wonder.
Mm.
It's delicious, and
Yeah.
I love what you were saying. Yes, absolutely. We don't have to look too far away for presence. We don't have to look too far
Exactly.
away for playfulness and honesty
Yeah.
and innocence. And I think as humans, we all got to come back home to those places.
Exactly. And I've been really curious of how do we then cultivate those qualities? And I love some of those words that you just added of honesty and playfulness. And uh, what I found, and I'd love to know what you think, that it can't be done so much from up here. It's about an orienting towards those qualities and just really being attentive of when they come up in our child, when they come up for ourselves. Sometimes we'll ask adults just to reflect. I experience joy when, put that on repeat. I experience joy when I'm outside. I experience joy when I'm really present with my child, and looking at what gets in the way as well, because it's about orienting towards, but then also kind of uncovering where it's getting blocked. And but how do you think those qualities get cultivated?
Well, you're talking about a lot of free child orientation. So through the lens of a transaction analysis, which is what I do, one of the styles or the sort of psychotherapies that I teach, we have a child, we have an adult, and we have a parental ego state. So within the ego states, we have a child and we have an overly adapted child. So an overly adapted child is a child who's like trying to make sense of the world, and with that, they adapt, they shape themselves in a way to respond to their environment. So we also have a free child part, which for me, I think a lot of what you're talking about comes from tapping into that place. Sometimes it's in creativity. A wonderful imagery I always give my clients is like, when you can just run up the street and kick leaves for no reason that are stacked on the side. And I used to dive into the leaves when if I'm in the mood. But but when I'm in the mood, I'm in the mood. It's like, that's free child. It's also when we have sex as well. It's another time where we're making love, or we're in that moment of presence, connection, spontaneity, awareness. Again, it's another type of autonomy in a way. It's like we're in the moment where everything is happening, and that's right now, folks. It's right now. And as you're hearing us talk, like, what's happening? Are you reflecting on your parenting? Are you reflecting on how you're teaching? Are you being kind? Are you being critical? What's happening? Just take a moment to notice that. And I think the honesty, the awareness is important. Like observing, as you say, what blocks us from being able to be authentic and honest. It's probably the first step, or one of the steps. And for me, joy is all free child for me. It's spontaneous. It's not something I can always plan. It's something that just happens. And I one way is joining my daughter in the wonder. She said, "Hey, Dad, I finished a group earlier," and she said, "Hey, I would love to go. I'd love to go for a drive with you on the motorcycle." So we hopped up and we went in, and
Oh, wow.
we went into the supermarket to get some eggs, and it was the most joyful experience because we were like, "Look at this, look at this, look at this," and I was skipping around like Bambi the deer after. And it was a small moment, and I allowed that moment to be nourishing because I was right there with her. I didn't have an agenda to be somewhere else.
Yep.
Suppose I would say this to most parents is like, and well, I suppose you don't have to be parents for this to be useful. Is like, try to be present to what you're doing. Try to give all, whether it's if you're shopping, like try to be there in the moment with it. Like kind of slow it down, like take it in, see somebody, say hi to someone, exchange with life in some ordinary way. And I think exchanging with life, Erin, I think by coming out of the roboticness of life, come out of the control of life, because that saps a lot of those qualities that you're talking about. Because our little children design ways to make sense of the world, and as we become adults, some of those styles is to control every bloody thing to make us feel safe and secure. But it also amputates these things you're talking about: joy, aliveness, connectivity. It promotes sterility, sort of pasteurized way of living in a way that loses out on the yum that makes life worth living. So it's hard for me to answer your question directly, but it's all those things. It's about it's allowing yourself to join your children. It's about allowing yourself to join life and look at, honestly, with awareness, what holds you back? Where's the fear? Where's the rigidity? And if you can't find your way through that yourself, then checking in with Erin and all her work that she's doing, or speak to a therapist, or connect to us here. We can help you in a way to find out what it is that's blocking that,
Mm.
those pillars of that, which are things that hold up like the essence of life, which is, intimacy, connection, spontaneity, awareness, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. That's what it's all about.
And I have a question as well. I was talking to some people in my group that you were coming on today, and they were wondering, like in schools, we're talking about, this idea of that you were mentioning in relation to, teachers taking accountability for their hooks or triggers that are coming up. And so that's wonderful. So it's the teachers are being invited to explore themselves a little bit.
Mhm.
But what about what's been taught?
You mean the curriculum itself?
The curriculum, where do you feel that could evolve as well, or are you kind of happy with that?
I mean, gosh, that's a whole other sort of life's work to consider. I mean, I think going back to as where we began of the putting the lens more on seeing who the child is as a person and looking for the naming the qualities of their spirit. And I think having things in the curriculum that can help nourish those aspects would be really important. I mean, I don't think we have to throw out reading and writing and math and pieces like that. And to be successful in this work, I think it's knowing what rate of change is really going to be possible. And so realistically, I think it's got to be a slow kind of transforming, but uh, I think it'd be really interesting. I'm thinking out loud here. It's something, it's a good question. I haven't considered too much, but of what would be a consciousness curriculum, for lack of a better explanation, of what are these life skills that in programs like yours and some of the work I'm trying to do of teaching adults, what would those look like in children's language and developmentally appropriate ways of helping them understand the same things, and at a younger age naming and introducing these ideas of our core capacity and speaking more directly to that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a little bit biased because I think groups, bringing groups together, because so many things happens in a group, because
Yeah,
children define who they are
right.
in groups, family groups,
Absolutely. Hmm.
in their classroom, in their school, in sports. They always are defining who they are in groups. They don't do that by themselves.
Yeah.
So to have a different type of group that's there to help them within this educational part, also for teachers to help them as well, I think
Mhm.
it's profound. But to have children, and what do children do very, very well? They mimic. They mimic behaviors. So having groups where you have a mixture of sort of, like where the facilitator has these qualities of, I call autonomous qualities, where they're good enough, not perfect, because there's no such
Sure.
thing, but where they're curious about like healthy orientations, like intimacy, connection, spontaneity, playfulness,
Mm.
sort of empathy, all these wonderful qualities that they bring in, and where we talk about different subjects and struggles. And it doesn't always have to be the same age of group, because it can be an older kids, and we can have you can work it out as same age, or you can have mixed ages, but within about a 4 or 5 year age bracket. And through that, you could help the quiet kids have a voice over time. You could have the younger kids hear stories from the older kids that help them be aware of struggles that are coming, or
Yeah.
helps them learn, wow, like there's a wonderful attribute that, yeah, and vice versa for young kids coming through. You see, in a group, everyone is beneficial.
Right.
Everybody has something to bring. So for me, I would love to have all schools over the world. So if you have any governmental people watching,
Mhm.
any higher up educational governmental people watching, Erin's got something awesome that's cooking in the kitchen that can really make a real hearty soup that can really help nourish the children of our future who'll be taking care of the world. And for sure, I think that would be something that I am passionate about, and I become even more passionate about it when with my daughter coming along and to see what she brings and what she comes alive with people. And she's a single. We have only have the one kid at the moment, so I see when she steps into a group how the group becomes the space for her to play, the place where she grows and she seeks them out. She goes. It's so powerful to observe that and to foster that in schools. Like, they're in groups all the time, but as you said, what would it be like to put in sort of a conscious space within a group, a conscious group in a way, to to foster talking about education, working for the kids, what's not working for the kids,
exactly,
or even make a group where you have 15-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 8-year-olds, and 6-year-olds who all love mathematics, sitting talking about the things they love about what they love about maths, and what sort of amazingness is going to happen in that sort of environment for the learning, because they all love it. So it's something about bringing people together in new ways is what I'm thinking. And Erin, I think you're really piloting something powerful here. And what's the plans for the future?
Well, right now we've got courses online for teachers and for parents, and then for anyone, because the more we do this work, the more we realize, yes, it's about helping us with children, but it's also helping us with the inner child that's within all of us, and the ability for anybody to reconnect to what's most important, to unhook from reactivity, to see others from a more compassionate lens, where we're looking at whenever there's a undesired, challenging behavior, there's something going on underneath it, seeing that way. That's something that benefits all of us. So the vision is to try to do this more in schools increasingly. So if anyone listening is part of a school, we'd love to come to you in person or virtually. Same thing with speaking with groups of parents and sharing some of this work. And we're working on putting a book together of actually the third component of the program we didn't talk too much about today, but it's these 12 ways of being that came about from 20 years in the classroom and noticing patterns in students, and the observer and the performer and the thinker and the artist, and not at all labeling. All 12 ways of being can be in every single person in different degrees or different times of day, but using that as a framework to, particularly, I think some adults are better at, or just it's easier to see children in that way, but some need that support of that framework. So we're working, putting that out as a resource to parents and teachers, and we'll see what comes.
Wow. Well, if you get that book put together, please send me a copy. I would love to have one. It sounds amazing. I love that idea. This is so important, guys. This is a topic I think we're going to be returning to here on the Wellbeing channel. And please send us in your questions and your sort of curiosities in relation to, or like things that you would like in this arena around education and parenting that you would like us to talk about moving forward. And to all the viewers who are watching, please, if you find that there's someone in your community or in your family or somebody who's struggling with a son or a daughter who's having challenges at school, or you're a teacher and you're challenged with just the weight of the work, or you're a parent who's just feeling in the spin cycle, especially coming towards Christmas, because it's an extra heavy time for a lot of us. And I did a podcast the other day talking about the struggles around Christmas and how we all need to move towards intimacy. And sometimes if we can't find a way there, which is hard, then we need to talk to some people and share the struggle. So again, reaching out to a therapist in your community or to our channel, we would love to help and support you in any way. But for today, Erin, thank you so much for taking time out of this wintry morning in Connecticut. Thank you.
Oh, what a total honor to be here and inspiring. And thank you for the amazing work that you're doing in the world and the opportunity to get to speak with you.
Yeah, well, it's been a wonderful exchange. I've been really enjoying it. You know, I apologize. I've got a little head cold today, but there ain't no head cold in the space today when I'm talking because my heart's involved. My head's not so much involved in the deal tonight. So thank you all for watching. And we got another podcast coming on Thursday, and then we'll break for the holidays. So for now, Erin, thank you for your time, and for the viewers, thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed it, please share it. Please hit the likes. Please hit subscribe, and get this little button operating and click as you go. But thank you again, and we'll see you on Thursday evening for those who are tuned in. Thanks, Erin.
Thank you.